Well, hello and welcome to Frontier Nursing University's Empower 2022 panel discussion. In the interest of time, we are going to hold all questions until the end of the session for our Q&A session. But please feel free to place your questions or any ideas that you have that come up along the way in the chat box. We will be monitoring that for the question and answer session. My name is Dr. April Phillips, and I am the Clinical Director of the Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Program here at Frontier Nursing University. And it is truly my pleasure to introduce our panelists for this evening. I will hand it over to them to further let you know a little bit more about themselves. But firstly, we have Dr. Thomas George. And secondly, we have Dr. Kristen Gianellis and Dr. April Hainline. And without further ado, I will hand it over to our panelists. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, good evening. We were asked to share what type of nurse practitioner we are, what program we may have attended at FNU, and why did we become a nurse practitioner. So I'll start. I'm Thomas George, and I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I focus on obesity and diabetes. And I attended both MSN and DNP programs at FNU. And I really became a nurse practitioner to move out of the downstream sick care system to move upstream into the world of wellness and health promotion and prevention. And I was largely influenced by my grandmother, who was a mother of 10, but she was also a World War II Nurse Cadet Corps graduate. So I have wanted to follow in her footsteps, which I've done since the 90s as a nurse. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. Well, I am Dr. Kristen Gianellis. I am a adult and women's health nurse practitioner, although I would say I more identify as a women's health nurse practitioner. I am in my 19th year of practice as of advanced practice as a nurse practitioner. I got my DNP from Frontier after being out in practice for about 13 years. I did my MSN at a brick and mortar university at Simmons University in Boston. I didn't know about Frontier at the time that I was looking for master's programs back in the Stone Ages. I wish I had, but I was limited by geography at that time, and so that's where I landed. I am currently full-time faculty at FNU in the DNP clinical faculty. I'm also course coordinator for the QI implementation course, and I do maintain 1 day of clinical practice per week as an NP, working in an urban FQHC in Providence, Rhode Island. I provide OBGYN care and gender diverse pelvic and reproductive health care. And then as far as why I became an NP, this is, you would think I would have an answer after all of these years. I still don't. And I'm really not sure I have an answer today. But I think that it's a complicated journey of many small decisions that led me to this place. I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy that I made each and every one of those small decisions along the way. And here I am. And I am continually a work in progress. I'll hand it over to April.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Hainline. And while I would love to say that I do have my doctorate, I do not currently. So just to keep the record straight. So I finished with my master's this past year through FNU. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. That's a track that I went through. A little bit more about myself. I live in a rural community in Western Kentucky. And my primary focus for my community, even as a new provider, just 6 months out of graduation, is focusing on local rural LGBTQ mental health. And that is my focus area, as well as getting my feet underneath me as a new provider. And why I became a nurse practitioner was really looking at, this is where I'm from, and I've been gone for a couple decades, and seeing what the greatest need was within my community, and going back to pursue my master's and to do psych was the right choice for me for my community. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you all for your introductions. That's an impressive group with lots of experience and going in different areas. One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, how do you feel like your work impacts your community? And then in addition to that, how did your program, your nursing program, either at Frontier Nursing University or elsewhere, how did that prepare you for work in your community?
That's an excellent question. And I think that we really impact, and I know I'm impacting my community at the patient level, the population level, community level, and at the provider level. I am really focused on treating obesity first, and that means bringing evidence from the latest and greatest bodies of research into primary care. So if I can accelerate that assimilation of knowledge, I've done my work, but it begins with patients. So I have a very focused obesity practice that's inside of a context of a family medicine clinic. And there we treat obesity first. But from there, we also take the evidence and the education, and we've educated our other providers. We have 10 providers in our clinic, and all of them are now trained in obesity. So in the community level, I'm working with a federally qualified health center, health department, and county extension, local schools, and we do everything from writing grants to making videos. We go into the schools and we prescribe tokens for the farmers market, and then we show the kids how to cook these great foods. In fact, one of the schools in one of our pilot projects, the kids raise their own eggs and vegetables in their garden, and they go home and tell mom and dad about why these vegetables are so good. And then, at the population provider level, I'm a very active member with the Obesity Society and the Obesity Medicine Association. And as such, all my postdoctoral focus has been on specializing in obesity with certifications from both of those organizations. And that's allowed me at the provider level to equip other providers with this knowledge to treat obesity first. So I'm kind of a broken record. You'll hear me talk about obesity a lot, but that's because it's a huge need. And FNU helped this because they promoted this disruptive spirit in me. I think I was born with a set of lenses that sees the world through how it could be better. And healthcare is really broken right now. So how do we make it better? We move upstream and we make big, bold, sometimes I think it was Jim Collins who said, big, hairy, audacious goals. We have to not be afraid to challenge the status quo. And that's what FNU did. In one of the courses, it literally had a project called Disruptive Innovator. And it was in there that I said, wow, there's a gap in primary care. Let's address obesity in primary care. That then became my doctoral work. And now it's everything that I do. And that was because FNU fosters that environment. They encourage us not just to talk about it academically, but to make a difference. And then they equipped us with the pathways, resources, and people to make a difference, to translate these thoughts into action. So FNU gave me an environment that kind of welcomed my middle school to adolescent disruptive behavior, but channeled it in the right direction.
So, Thomas, of course, you stole my theoretical framework for how I was going to answer that question. I think clearly we went to the same doctoral program, so clearly we're answering in the same way. I was going to go with the whole patient, community, provider, and population level answer on that one, but I guess I'll try to mix it up a little bit. But yes. I too would say that I am impacting my community on a lot of different levels. As an individual provider, I get the opportunity to sit with patients in the FQHC and really be with them in their individual needs. And so I work with a population of undocumented folks, a population who do not, English is not their primary language. I work with a population who are very gender diverse, and they are seeking care for their reproductive health and their pelvises. And so, you know, traditionally we may have OBGYN on the door, and I may have women's health before my name or after my name, but we get a little bit off to the side after that, and we kind of just do what we need to do to take care of patients. I also work closely with the Rhode Island Department of Health. Rhode Island's a small state. We are the smallest, but that makes it cool because we get to do a lot of great things, and everyone knows everyone around here. And so I work with the Rhode Island Department of Health and the Rhode Island Public Health Institute, and working with the Commission on the Health Equity Zone initiative. And, you know, we've done a lot with COVID-19 and sort of making sure that our vaccines were equitably distributed. And so that allowed me to flex some muscles that were outside of my normal routine, being out and doing things that were not GYN related, not reproductive related at all, but that was fun. And then, you know, my work, working for Frontier and being DNP clinical faculty, you know, I really see that as being the ultimate way that I get to be involved in population health, because my students are all doing population health projects, and I am mentoring all of these students in individual population health projects. So I have my hands at any point in time in 20 plus population health projects spread out across the globe. And that just really excites me. And I am lighting the fire of quality improvement in other students and helping them to become agents of change in their community. When I think about the way that my MSN program prepared me, my MSN program was not Frontier, and it definitely prepared me to be a great clinician. And I was a great clinician, great safe provider, definitely had a great skill set with good, you know, I feel like I went out as an expert and, you know, really have done quite well. Then I came to Frontier and something changed. I went and I did my doctorate here, and my focus really did change. And there is something about the mission here at Frontier and our clear focus on underserved populations. And I look at my CV before Frontier and after Frontier. And all of my positions before Frontier, I look at them and I see those positions, I chose them because they served my needs. And yes, I was doing good things for some people, but then the positions that I have taken after Frontier have been serving populations. And I've chosen those positions because of the populations that I could serve. And so that really has changed the way that I have, Frontier has changed me.
Excellent. So things as far as what the impact that as a new provider, I feel like I'm having a community is my continuing that drive of learning and really digging into what my community needs are. And that can seem daunting as a new provider to try to, you know, get going and be like, what are my community's needs and what resources are there that are available? And so I think one of the things that has been key to starting out in this field is having a practice that is a new practice. It's growing. But it's focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are a practice that values that above everything else. And I think that has helped me be able to take what I learned at Frontier as far as my focus on underserved communities and bringing that into a practice and not having to fight against, having to fight against things that aren't so diverse, equitable, or inclusive. And that has been, I think, a really wonderful aspect of coming out of school. One of the things that just the basics that sometimes then get overlooked is just establishing, affirming, and welcoming practice policies and intake processes, and collaborating with other primary care offices to say, hey, this is the services we offer, and trying to really, even though we're not a integrated behavioral health practice, still reaching out to having those people to know that we exist and to come to us. I think that's very important. So yeah, learning how to be a provider with all of that is a lot, but it's worth it. So that's me.
Thank you, April. We've all been there as the new provider. We're so glad that you're on our panel because you give us a totally different perspective that we can all kind of remember.
Yes.
The theme for National Nurse Practitioner Week is rising to meet the needs of patients. And you've all kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to allow you the opportunity to dig a little deeper by asking, are there any specific needs that you found in your community? And you've mentioned several of those that you've had to address. How do you feel that you are personally rising to meet the needs of the patients in your community? And how can the listeners here tonight take this information and apply it to their own practice?
This is like the classic essay question where it says it's one question, but there are like a zillion questions inside of it. So, the theme is rising to meet the needs of patients. And that begins with us listening. We have to hear what those needs are. And sometimes we have to survey the environment to make sure it's not our bias that's interrupting our vision of what these patients truly need. For me, the need that's specifically in our area, I live in the DC area. I've served in both Baltimore and in Western Maryland. So whether it's an impoverished Appalachian rural area or an inner city, obesity disproportionately affects these communities of color, and lower income levels seem to be at a higher risk of obesity. But that's not it. There's more. Right now, 70% of adults in America have overweight or obesity. And we're moving to call that pre-obesity and obesity, but 70%. There are 236 associated conditions with obesity. So when we treat it first, we're either halting, reversing, or preventing those comorbid conditions. So this is a big need in our community, but the really huge need is taking the evidence into practice. And how do we do that? Well, we can't have specialists. We need primary care experts to go out into the field and make a difference because there aren't enough specialists. We have to specialize in the current need. It's also a threat to national security. It's one of the leading reasons why new recruits cannot enter the military is because their BMI or cannot pass the physical readiness test. Right now, children have a 1 in 2, 50% lifetime risk of developing obesity. And it's one of the primary drivers outside of COVID for reducing our longevity. But it's not just longevity, it's also health span. Lifespan is how long we live. Health span is how long we live well. And obesity is taking time off of both the health span and the lifespan. So is this a community need? Absolutely. How do we address it? And how am I rising to do it? Well, as I said, there are training opportunities. We can actually go, and we're welcome to places like the Obesity Medicine Association and the Obesity Society, and they have pathways to train to actually develop this skill set of treating obesity first in the primary care setting. And personally, it's also a fight for me. I had a traumatic brain injury, and as a result, my hypothalamus stopped doing what it was supposed to do, and I gained over 125 pounds. And it was a terrible journey for me. I was depressed, my self-image changed, but it gave me empathy that I now translate into my practice, because I've treated my obesity successfully and kept over 100 pounds off over several decades. But I never forget how I felt going from one day being very fit and within a year to being over 320 pounds. So it's not about the weight. And that's one of the first things that we have to teach people in our communities. It's about the underlying mechanisms that are causing their bodies to retain energy in the form of fat. And this excess fat not only disrupts mechanically on the wear and tear on joints, and but also there's an endocrine function that actually then causes the metabolic resistance and pre-diabetes and diabetes. So there's quite a clear pathway. So yes, I am a broken record, but if you're going to if any of this has tickled your heart or your ears and you want to learn more, you can email me. I'll gladly send you a list that's hyperlinked to all the current things. But really, if you're going to make a difference, you have to hear what the needs are and then see what different looks like, and then try it. And if that doesn't work, keep trying until you find what works, because obesity is multifactorial. Each person has a different background and different genotype that leads to their phenotype. And some researchers say there are 4 and up to 6 different phenotypes that they're identifying right now. So there's more, but the big thing is getting in the fight and making yourself aware. Move from not knowing to knowing, and then from not doing to doing. And yeah, that's it. I'm sorry for being a broken record, but that's the drum I'm going to beat.
So I think that meeting the needs, again, I think is mental health services in general in rural areas is a challenge. And not only is it a challenge just across the board, it is challenging for our queer community to find affirming providers. So I think that one of the things that we've have in the works is putting together a dinner just for inviting primary care providers throughout the region, just to talk about what is LGBTQ health. What is that? Because I think people are like, oh, what's the difference? So someone's queer, how does that make a difference to what care I'm providing? And to just bring together a community to have those conversations. And I think that that's one way in which I think it's important for us to get, to go beyond, our client face to face, but it's just, affecting the community of providers out there. So that's one way that we're kind of trying to tailor what we bring to the community. So.
All right, thank you. I knew April had a great response to that question, so I wanted to hear her response first. So, I think that, probably being the person who's been the nurse practitioner the longest on this panel, my response here, I could go through my entire journey and speak to every single time that I have looked at the needs of my community and risen to the needs of my community. And that could be a little bit boring. I've done it a lot of times, but at the same time, I'm also, I think how I want to answer this is that I'm currently in a state of in a place of discernment right now. I'm in a place right now of trying to figure out where my next move is, what my next place is, and where I am needed next. And what I would say to the people in the audience is that our work is never done, and that there's never a, and that was it. That was the need I needed to meet, and now I'm complete. I have found my niche and I have done my work as an NP. I very much feel like I have done a lot of things, and that has been wonderful. And I feel fulfilled in what I'm currently doing, but I also have this, this nagging sense that there is something else to be done. And I don't know what that is right now. And I am in a process right now of trying to figure out what that is. I will tell you all that every time I participate in the bound sessions where we put the frontier, when we put the frontier, our mission up, and they say, you know, we put up the mission, we tell future students about the mission of Frontier. The word that jumps out to me over the past 6 months has perpetually been entrepreneurial. And so I know that but the first step in that journey is assessing the community, looking for needs, and trying to figure out what the needs are and where I am needed next. And so I certainly know a lot about my community. I certainly am serving in a lot of ways that are needed, but at the same time, I also I'm trying to figure out where I go next. And I'm frequently reminded of the fact that there are many nurse practitioners and nurse midwives who have gone before us, who have done a lot of things throughout their careers. And really, when you look at their career span, it's like even some of the greatest things that they have done have come even 30 plus 40 years into their work life. And so I sit here and think, wow, I may only be at the beginning. And so I don't know. I don't know where I'm going next.
Wow, thank you so much. You all have such amazing histories, and you're clearly, living the frontier mission in your communities through being a change agent and constantly looking for what's next and how you can make a difference. It's wonderful to hear your stories. I will ask you one question. What lessons have you learned from your journey in becoming a nurse practitioner? I know you've spoken to this a bit, but if you could expand, we'd really appreciate it.
Funny thing, I won't talk about obesity in the answer to this question. There are two really big takeaways. I have been in nursing since the early 90s, and for a large part of my career, I have led, changed, started, or transformed a variety of organizations literally across the globe. And I've had titles ranging from CEO to CNO to COO, and all of those titles are meaningless in comparison to the title nurse practitioner to me. And that's because I am engaged interpersonally with real people with real concerns, making a real difference. So the accumulation of all this knowledge and experience really informs what type of nurse practitioners we are, and never neglect that, because those experiences are valuable and those can shape organizations to provide better care for people, populations, and also to affect the providers that do it. But the most important lesson I've learned is that the journey never ends. We should always strive to be continuously becoming the best nurse practitioners we can be, never content with the status quo, and always moving forward to make the world a better place, one patient at a time. That's it.
So I think one of the things that I have learned from my journey becoming a nurse practitioner. So when I was in my MSN program, and I know that I didn't do this at Frontier, but I know that it's part of the MSN program at Frontier, is the value of reflection. And I remember being a student and thinking, oh, we've got to write another reflection. Always reflecting. But I know now that, reflection is a valuable part of the learning process. But when I first got out of school and had a lot of my important firsts as a new nurse practitioner, and throughout my career, as I have had important events happen in my practice, I have learned about, I've returned to that value of that reflection. again and again. And, you know, it is how we develop our sense of authenticity. It is how we mold our professional behavior. It's how we really, and obviously we reflect, but we reflect on how something went, think about what we would have liked to happen, or if we thought it went well, and then we move forward. And, you know, I think especially, I remember back to a few times as a brand new nurse practitioner having to, you know, give bad news for the first time, or having a poor outcome for the first time, or having just, I mean, things that happen as a nurse practitioner, and you never feel prepared for that. And immediately returning to reflection as a way to ground myself and to say, like, okay, but I also still know that I'm here for a reason, and that I acted appropriately in the way that I was supposed to. There may have been some ways that I could have improved, but at the same time, it felt like a way to gain closure, but also to move forward. And so I keep doing that reflection again and again and again. So I would say to all of you who are in school or about to get in school, don't turn your nose up at the reflections. Lean into the reflections.
So the journey to becoming a nurse practitioner, I think that, like it's already been said, that it does continue. It continues every day. This is not an end point, that once graduation is, oh, I'm a nurse practitioner, the journey has ended. You know, even in the short period of time that I have been practicing, that it is clear that that this journey is going to have many different paths, and just like Dr. Gianellis was saying, and your years of experience, what you have done, but yet there's so many things that are available to us out there, and really knowing that so many opportunities exist for us in that growth mentality. One of the things I think that has been key along this journey are mentors, and having mentors within the program, having mentors that have been established in the program and continue to this day, and developing new mentorships as a provider. I think that has been a key for me as a new provider, to really being able to have time, like Dr. Gianella said, for reflection, but to have, you know, someone else to bounce things off of, and to not feel so alone, because that journey, that expert to novice, we hear that term, but it's real, right? It really is real. Going from an expert nurse to a novice has very significant challenges, and mentorship, I think, has really been key for me to maintain a sense of moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you all for those answers. I think all of us in healthcare can say that we have learned many lessons in our time in healthcare. Some came hard and some came easy, but we've learned many lessons. And I just wonder if we could dig a little deeper and ask, what do you wish you had known when you started your journey to become a nurse practitioner?
I will say that I originally, and I'm speaking to people who might be women's health nurse practitioners out there, because I know that there may not be a lot of people out there who are women's health nurse practitioners, but I will say that I only wanted to be a women's health nurse practitioner, and I was told that I had to get a second certification because I just would not be marketable enough without a second certification. And so I went kicking and screaming into it and did an adult certification, which was fine. And I don't actually have any scars from it or anything. But at the same time, and I certainly, it's good knowledge that I have, but at the same time, I knew very much what I wanted, and I knew where I needed to be, and I knew the role I needed to be in. And I will tell you that I have always been in roles that, well, almost always been in roles that used my women's health nurse practitioner certification. The one time I used a role that I was in a role that used my adult certification, I was miserable. And I look back at that and I think, I knew myself way back at the beginning, and I knew exactly what I wanted then. And I listened to other people, and instead of myself, and I wouldn't say don't get other certifications. That's not my end story here at all. I would say that listen to what you believe for yourself. And so, don't chase the job that has the highest paycheck because someone says, oh, you could make more money over here. Don't do what someone else says is, oh, this is what you should do. You have to do what's right for you. You can't force a square peg into a round hole. So that to me is what I wish I had knew. But again, I'm not scarred by my adult certification by any means.
So what I wish I knew before is I think that the challenges that exist from going from bedside nursing to psychiatric care was a big. I don't think I fully understood like how much of my style would have to shift and change, and how I would need to learn a lot of different skills. Like I can't fluff a pillow to make, things better, and there are different things that you think about, that your style is different, that things, I just don't think I appreciated it as much as I do now. And knowing that everybody's style is different, you're seeing your preceptor, their style may be completely different than yours, and developing that I think is really important too, to develop your own voice and to know how you're interacting with your clients. So that's kind of what I wish I had appreciated better beforehand.
I wish somebody would have told me about prior authorizations. Wow, nothing gets me going more than trying to have to spend an hour justifying why the best evidence-based practice for our patient needs to be justified in triplicate. Holy Hannah, I have literally pulled what's left of my hair out doing prior authorizations. And all joking aside, it's the management side of primary care as a nurse practitioner that I wish somebody would have given me more insight in. I didn't realize that it's like that old vaudeville act where they're balancing plates on poles and they're all spinning and there are like a dozen of them. And the tension comes because you see one wobbling and it's about to fall and you have to race over and correct it and then race over to the other side. That is family practice in a nutshell. You're always managing something. And I think the third thing that I really would have wanted to know is that it's a kind of overwhelming at times for me to know that in primary care, in family practice, you have to have a very wide body of knowledge that might be shallow, but it has to be wide. You really have to know how to address so many different things. So I didn't take that into account when I was going in there, and I love it. I love the challenge, but I also wish, I think my fourth thing I wish somebody would have told me was that there are different pathways. I would have loved to have been dual certified, or maybe found a pathway to get that psych mental health nurse practitioner, because behavioral health plays such a vital role in the treatment of obesity. So there you go. I had to get it in there, but yes, yeah, it would have been cool to have that. So Yeah, I think I have a longer list, but those are the big ones. Did I mention prior authorization? Just
Thank you for that. And Thomas, I promise I can feel you when you say prior authorization. And also when you say you got to be comfortable with what you don't know, not knowing. One of those reflective questions, Dr. Gianellis. If you had to give one piece of advice for someone who's considering applying to be an FNU student, that's the one thing you all have in common, is that you had some form or part of your education here at FNU. If you had to give one piece of advice for someone considering to apply at FNU as a student, what would that piece of advice be?
It's going to be taking every opportunity to be part of community here at Frontier. Community is key here, and we really do live out our community of inquiry. We really are doing the whole culture of caring thing. Like it's not just words that we put on our website, it's for real, it happens. And the community aspect of this university is really part of what makes it work. And when I compare my experience in a brick and mortar university, where you would think I would have had a different community experience, to my experience in an online university, I developed such a different sense of a community supporting me. I also created connections with people from across disciplines, connections with people in other states, in other in other parts of their practice. So they may have been, more experienced or less experienced, or just starting out, or maybe in a different setting or and really that has, that breadth of experience has really changed my view as a nurse practitioner. It has made me a much stronger provider. It has given me an email inbox and an email address book and a cell phone full of contacts all over the place that I can just immediately get a curbside consult from a whole bunch of people, but also reach out to people for support, for advice that's not about clinical things as well. And really, that you have to actually engage with that. So you have to come to these types of things. You have to show up at the sessions during NP week, and you have to come to the IHI sessions, and you have to do all of those things to engage in the community. But the benefits to that are just tremendous. And your learning grows, you grow as a clinician, as a provider, and just it stays with you.
Okay. So I was going to say, I think that the biggest piece of advice I have is that it's never too early in the application process to make those connections with providers in your area. That is critical for you understanding your community better, getting that critical preceptor role that is important to have, and to find someone that you connect with and that you have similar goals with. But just doing those things, really thinking of yourself in that role prior to application to kind of visualize those things. I think those are important as well. And another thing that I think is equally as important, Dr. Gianellis just spoke to that, is that being involved truly being involved as much as you can. There are clubs to be a part of, there's affinity groups to be a part of, there's DEI work to be a part of. And I think that that's truly a great benefit to you as a student thinking about doing those things in the application process, thinking about how can I be involved. So.
You know, if you're considering FNU, my first question would be, what was your why for becoming a nurse? Why did you want to become a nurse in the first place? Because if it was to make a meaningful difference in the lives of people that you serve, if it's to help people obtain wellness and promote health, then FNU is a great choice. You should choose a school that aligns with your personal values and your own mission. I chose FNU because I think that we are more than just an educational institution. I believe we're a mission and a movement. And as a university, it's really a unity of diversity that makes our university. We have every political spectrum, religious spectrum, you fill in the blanks, but it's out of that is this rich tapestry that allows us to be all inclined in the same direction. When our mission says that we're preparing competent nurses, yes, our pass rate shows that. Entrepreneurial, I became the CEO of my clinic site. I don't think it gets more entrepreneurial than that. Ethical, yes. If we're going to talk about running a business, we should talk about ethical profit and how do we redistribute that to maximize the care for those people that we're taking care of. And compassionate, that is a common theme. Everybody I've encountered at FNU is compassionate, truly caring about making a difference to serve everybody, but that emphasis on underserved populations, diverse and rural, and where we started looking at women and children. That's us in a nutshell. So if those things align with your personal mission and vision, then we're the right place. If you're just looking for a diploma, not the right place. You might actually not like that, you know, and that's some people are looking for a diploma pathway. And I would say, yeah, you could do that here, but in the process, you might be changed and get reconnected with your why. So why did you become a nurse? And why might a school like FNU be important to you? No, I think those are compelling reasons.
I certainly agree. Thank you all for that. Thank you for your answers. I've been watching the chat and we don't have any questions in the chat. Should we just open up to see if anybody in the audience here has some questions that they would like to ask?
The question has been semi-answered, but I'd like to hear the panel speak a little bit more into this. I am an experienced nurse. I am currently starting my clinicals with my FNP program at Frontier. And I chose FNP because I want to be able to treat both children and adults, but I've been specializing in peds the last while. When we first got nursing license, they of course encouraged us to go broad, do med surg or something broad initially, and then narrow down unless you knew exactly what you wanted to specialize in. So what is your advice for starting out? If you need to have a broad base, but you're still wanting to specialize, how quickly do you narrow down? And how, like the shallow, broad knowledge, that Dr. Thomas mentioned as far as the family nurse practitioner has to have, but then still wanting to specialize. Finding that balance there. Can you speak into that?
I can say, and I'm not a family nurse practitioner. Funny enough, when I was choosing my second, certification that was sort of forced on me, family nurse practitioner was not really an option in the Boston area in the early 2000s. It was really hard. It was hard to find a program that had an FNP program. But anyways, what I will say is that my first job out of my WHNP program was in GYN oncology, and which is incredibly specialized. It's about as specialty as you get. And I don't regret that choice of a job. I do think that it was, I was there for a couple of years, and then I went to general OBGYN to get a sense for, I needed to feel some normal pelvises, and I needed to know what normal looked like a little bit more. I needed to see that normal pathology to feel comfortable. But no one looked at me funny when I was applying for normal or for general after having a specialty position immediately out of school. And I should say the specialty position I took was because my nursing experience was in oncology. And so it sort of married my nursing experience in oncology and my GYN, passion. I thought, oh, this is wonderful. And so, that was fun in a way that ovarian cancer is not all that fun. But I did recognize after about a year and a half that I needed some normal pelvises. So I think I could have stayed there forever if I wanted to. But again, I was hired very easily into a general practice, and they were okay with the fact that I was essentially a new-ish grad, but they felt strongly that my experience in the specialty was valuable still.
I can say this is a personal opinion, but I'm old. Okay, not as old. I plan on going to like 120, so I'm not halfway there yet. But I wasn't going to waste time doing things that I knew I wasn't going to be doing. I jumped right in the lane that I wanted to go. I knew that obesity was going to be my thing. I knew the need was there. So I just said, I'm going to throw all the engines and afterburners on and pursue it. And here's what happens. I haven't neglected being a full spectrum family nurse practitioner because, as I mentioned, obesity has 236 associated conditions that we're treating. So I need to understand hypertension, lipidology, and all the primary and secondary prevention things that are out there. The other part of it is when I'm treating obesity, I'm also treating families. And when I'm treating families, I need to understand the needs of mom, dad, and children. And this is the idea that we bring forward, is that all of our knowledge as nurses carries forward into our practice as nurse practitioners. And we're building on that. So if your direction and you think you're going to go to peds, then I'd say go for it. That's just my personal opinion. And I would like to know what some of the other panelists or even some of our moderators who might have other opinions on that too. And April, what are your thoughts?
I truly believe it is such a personal decision that I think that it's hard for me, even, in my years of nursing, I went into a specialty to begin with, and then I realized, maybe same thing like Dr. Gianellis, I need some more general. And it worked out really well for me. Now, as a new provider, I'm fairly broad and wanting to go more narrow now. So I'm taking it from a different perspective this time. So I think maybe you can't go wrong. That's the beauty of it, is that you can't go wrong with it. You can choose, and there's plenty of opportunity out there. That's my thoughts about it.
Follow the needs of the community.
That was a great question. We are coming up on just a few minutes left, and I wanted to make sure that we had time to thank the people who came to participate and listen in on this rich conversation, and to thank our panelists for being so open and so informative. Every time I go to a session like this, I make sure I have a little notepad, because I get these pearls that you're going to become a Post-it note in my office. I'm just going to tell you, because when Kristen talked about the work is never done, the first thing I thought about it was like housework, but more is there's always a continuation and moving on, and the fact that you're still looking for what's next. after that really spoke to me when you said that. And I thank you for that. And April, when you talked about the journey continues, the learning continues, and the importance of establishing those mentorship relationships as you continue through those journey. I still have mentors, and I find myself in a position of being a mentor. And so that is one of those light bulb moments, and maybe I won't give up all my mentees yet as I go through this process. And Thomas, the broken record, I just love it. Don't get tired. Just keep moving. That is that Nemo. Just keep moving. Just keep moving. Do that thing and focus on that thing that moves you. Work in your passion area so that you can really be that change agent in your community. If you were all over the place, you wouldn't serve the purpose for being the FNP that you are. So I, along with everyone else here, appreciate you sharing your experiences, sharing your wisdom, and letting us get to know you a little bit better through this session. So thank you to everyone for coming, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks for
all.
having us.
Thank you very much, and reach out if we can help in any way. That's truly our heart and desire to help you succeed.